In this video, I'm going to take a piece by George and Ira Gershwin. It's wonderful, from 1927. And I'm going to turn it into an intermediate level piano arrangement. And I'll do it on 2 levels. So the first level will be pretty straightforward, a basic chord arrangement with piano voicing. But I will introduce you to alternating bass in that one. And then the second arrangement will be a little bit more advanced, because I'll use some reharmonization, some chord extensions up to the 13th, some rootless voicings, and also I'll put in there a bossa nova beat. Now, the piece was recorded with a bossa nova beat a number of times, including some wonderful recordings by Diana Krall and João Gilberto. So I hope you enjoy it. So first I'm going to go ahead and put in the chord symbols. I'm going to get these chords from a typical fake book. There are a lot of sources for these songs, but these would be found in a typical fake book version. The next step is to make a chord chart of all the chords that we'll need. Now this piece starts in the key of E flat, so I'll just write out all the chords that are diatonic to the key of E flat, and then I'll notate the specific chords that we'll need that are related. E flat 6, just add a major 6th above the root. F minor 7, that's diatonic. F7, we'll have to change the A flat to an A. G minor 7, that's diatonic. G half diminished 7, we'll have to change that to a diminished triad by adding a D flat. G7, a few accidentals to make it a major triad with a minor 7th. B flat 7, that's diatonic, and B flat 9. We just have to add a 9th, which is the same as a major 2nd above the root. And then the same chord with a flat 9. The C becomes C flat. C minor 7, that's diatonic. C7, slight change of E flat to E natural. And then C7 with a flat 9. We'll add that 9th, which is the same as a 2nd, D, and flat it to D flat. Now the middle part of this piece is in the key of G, so we should also write out a chart of the chords in the key of G and find the chords that we need from there as well. G major 7, A minor 7, and D7, all diatonic chords right from the scale. Next, let's go back and identify the 3rd and the 7th of each chord. That'll help us to create the voicings. We'll do that right here on the chord sheet, and then we'll go to the music and write them in as well. I think you can see that I'm getting the 3rd and the 7th right from the chord chart and now just writing it onto the music. Of course, if the chord is a 6th chord, then I'm writing the 3rd and the 6th instead of the 3rd and the 7th. Now I'm ready to go ahead and write some pretty straightforward piano voicings. That 3rd and 7th, or 3rd and 6th, for each of these chords will be written directly underneath the melody note in the right hand. Paired with that, in the left hand will be the root. But here, we're going to try something a little different. We're going to write the root of the chord followed by the 5th. That's called an alternating bass. And here we'll keep it rather simple, just all half notes. So let's keep going with this process all the way through to the end of this piece. The 3rd and 7th in the right hand tucked right underneath that melody, and the root and the 5th for the left hand written in half notes. Notice for this chord, the G half diminished 7 chord, the 5th is going to have to be a lowered 5th, D flat, because the triad here is a diminished triad. For this C7, I'm going to enhance it just a little bit. I'll add a 9th, which is D, but flat it and make it D flat, a flat 9th. So I've got the 3rd and the 7th, the E and the B flat, but also in there the D flat. Okay, I'm going to fast forward. I'm going to push right to the end and finish this. 3rds and 7ths in the right hand, alternating bass in the left. Of course, if there are 2 chords in the measure, I'll only have room for the root tones of these chords in the left hand. Okay, let's look at the finished arrangement and see what it sounds like. You can see here I've renotated it using notation software. So that's a pretty nice and clear arrangement. And that alternating bass pattern in half notes actually isn't that far from a bossa nova beat. There are a lot of Brazilian recordings where the bass player is playing half notes for bossa novas, but we'll come back and enhance that a little bit. Also, I'd like to go through and enhance all the chords at this point. At the beginning here, we have the E flat chord for 2 measures, so we'll put in a little bit of variety. We'll add a ninth to this E flat 6 chord, and then also we'll use an E flat major 7, and then an E flat 6 in the next measure. That'll give us a little motion in the voice leading. For the next chord, we're going to use a tritone substitution. That's when you can go a tritone away from either a minor chord, or in this case a half diminished chord, or a dominant chord, and write a dominant chord on the root tone a tritone away. The reason why that will work so well here is because the melody notes actually comprise the 13th and sharp 11th of this D flat 13 chord. Let's take a look. First, we'll build a 13th chord off of C to make it a little easier to understand. So comparing to a C major scale, that's scale degree 1, 3, 5, flat 7 or lowered 7th, 9, sharp 11 or raised 11, and 13. That's the normal structure of a C13 if it's a dominant chord and includes an 11th. So let's see how this plays out in D flat. Again, thinking of a D flat major scale, the root, the 3rd, the 5th, the lowered 7th, C flat, the 9th, E flat, the raised 11th would be G natural, and the 13th, B flat. Remember, those were the 2 notes of the melody that we're trying to harmonize, the B flat and the G. That's going to sound nice. For this C7 chord, again, we'll get a little bit of internal motion if we go from the sharp 9 to the flat 9. A slight change here, we'll just make this minor 7 chord into a half diminished chord. That's a nice sound. We'll add a G6 to get a little motion in the voice leading. Here, we're going to reharmonize each dominant 7 chord by backing up on the circle of fifths. In other words, going up a perfect fifth and writing a minor chord, minor 7 to the dominant chord. Some people call these 2-5 pairs. So we're going to do that to each dominant chord. Back up on the circle of perfect fifth, write a minor 7 chord, and then return to the dominant 7 chord. So G7 becomes D minor 7, G7. C7 becomes G minor 7, C7. F7 becomes C minor 7, F7. And then the B flat 7 or the B flat 9 becomes F minor 7 to the B flat 7, flat 9. You can always experiment in doing that with a dominant 7 chord. For the next 2 measures, we'll handle that just as we did the first 2 measures. A little voice leading here, we'll do a F7 sus to the F7. That'll create a little voice leading of a B flat going to A. And the end here, I'm going to borrow from the original sheet music by inserting an E diminished 7 going to the F minor 7. That's actually a secondary diminished 7 chord. It's kind of nice. And for the B flat 7, since the G melody note is the 13th, we'll call it a B flat 13th chord. And for a little flavor, we'll add the flat 9th, which is C flat. Let's go ahead and make a chart of all these chords. Now we already did the D flat 13 chord, so let's do all the others. This is the E flat 6 with an added 9th, so we'll add an F to this chord. E flat major 7, that's just a major triad with a major 7th. The C7 sharp 9, this one is going to have a D sharp. And when it goes to the flat 9 chord, it'll go to D flat. The G6, we just add the interval of a major 6th above the G triad. D minor 7, minor triad with a minor 7th. The G7 is a major triad with a minor 7. And the F7 sus, for a sus chord, we use a perfect 4th interval above the root instead of a 3rd. And then that will go to the 3rd for the F7 chord. B flat resolving to A. The E diminished 7 chord, that's a diminished triad with a diminished 7th. It's all minor thirds stacked up. And then the B flat 13 flat 9, that's a B flat 7 chord. Here we'll add the 9th, the C, and flat it to C flat, and the G, which of course is going to be the melody note, that's the 13th. So aside from enhancing the chords, we're going to turn this arrangement into a bossa nova. We'll need to enhance the bass line a little bit, and then we'll need to add an accompanying rhythm to go along with the melody in the right hand. Let's start by writing a typical clave rhythm. for a bossa nova. That's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Let's try a different rhythm for the right hand. This is going to be more like an accompaniment guitar part. Sounds like 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. To go with that, let's write a bass line that's also typical. This one has a dotted quarter followed by an eighth. This is what it sounds like together. And we'll make the bass line a little bit fancier. Dotted quarter eighth, dotted quarter eighth. We'll listen to that one together with a guitar strumming pattern. So here, in the final arrangement, you can see that I've incorporated the simpler of the bossa nova bass lines, the alternating bass pattern, dotted quarter going to eighth, and then half note. And also, underneath the melody in the right hand, I've given little hints of the clave rhythm. It's sort of implied in the rhythm of the bottom two fingers of the right hand. Also, the chords that we discussed have been incorporated into those voicings as well. Take a look at that D flat 13 sharp 11th chord. You'll see all the notes that we've already discussed. One last area that I'd like to look at is where I reharmonized with that string of 2/5 progressions. Here I've incorporated some rootless voicings. Let's take a closer look. For each of these voicings, I'm not going to use a root, but I will use the third and the seventh, but place it in the left hand. This will make the voicings seem like they're a little bit lighter. Also, it's a great style to use if you were playing with a bass player. So for the G minor 7, I write the third and the seventh, that's B flat and F, plus an additional note, D, the fifth. For the C7, again, the third and fifth, the E and the B flat, and here the additional note will be the ninth, D, that ties over from the previous chord. C minor 7 will use the same voicing, just one chromatic alteration of E going to E flat. The F7, again, uses the third and the seventh. Now it's A and E flat. And the additional note is D once again, but here it's the 13th of the chord. Moving on, the F minor 7, the third and the seventh, A flat to E flat, and the additional note will be C, the fifth. I'll create a more standard voicing here for the B flat 7 by incorporating a root, and then the third and the seventh, the D and the A flat. We'll also add the 13th, which is a G, and then the flat ninth, which is a C flat. We can enhance the voicings with pitches in the right hand. Notice for the G minor 7th, I'm going to add a ninth. For the C7th, I'll add a sharp 11th. I'm going to create a little internal line. Notice the F of the G minor 7 going up to the F sharp. For the C9 sharp 11th. For the C minor 7th, I'll let that F sharp go up to G. And then for the F7, I'll add a flat 9. That's a G flat. So the line starts heading down chromatically again. And then we can finish that line in the next chord, the F minor 7, by simply going down to F. Let's hear this passage. Okay, that's it. Let's hear the whole thing.